For my anatomy and phys class, I'm going to do this, and I normally haven't done a whole lot on camera for you, um, but going into your kind of final two lessons for the year, there's a concept, two of them I wanted to go over because it's going to relate directly both to the reproductive cancers that we're going to be talking about, and then kind of your all comers cancers topic that I'm going to have you go over. And I want to talk about incidence and prevalence a little bit because it's not something that's directly anatomy and phys. And what I'm having you think about here at the end is kind of a public health epidemiology term. But since this is in the time of coronavirus and there's a lot of stuff being bandied about back and forth, it's relevant, and it's relevant to the assignment. And even though it's not anat and phys, it is interesting. So when you do these next two assignments, um, incidence and prevalence are related concepts, but they're not exactly the same thing. Incidence refers to the number of new cases of a particular disease or of a particular happening in a period of time. So it could be, in a day, in a week, in a month, but particularly when we're talking in epidemiology, we're usually looking at a year. And especially with cancer, with something that, even though they can be rapid, um, you're typically looking at number of new cases you get on a yearly or on an annual basis. Prevalence is the number of total cases of the disease that are new and ongoing. So as long as you have the disease or you have the illness, you count in the prevalence, which really means there's only two ways out of the game. And the best way to think about this is for me to show you. So let me switch boards. And I wish I could have drawn 100 circles, but then it might not have been big enough. So I drew 50 here. So each one of these circles represents a person, okay? And I wanted to do something with either 50 or 100 because it makes the math easy. So let's say there's a particular disease, and just off the top of my head, um, I can't even pick an example. But if we put an X in one of these, that means the person has the disease. So arbitrarily, I put an X here. So now that person has this form of cancer. So there were 50 people. One now has it. That's 1 in 50. And let's just say in a year, 2 people get the cancer. So 2 out of 50, well, that's 4%. This particular cancer would have an incidence of 4% per year. Now, first of all, that would be an unusually high rate, but it's an easy number to think of, okay? Now, as we're learning, and we've done in the class this year, and we've seen conditions, you see a lot of 5-year survival rates, and, that's not uncommon. So this has an incidence of 4%. So to make the numbers work, let's say next year, because it's a 4% incidence, well, that means 2 more people are likely to get it. Now, that does not mean in our population of 50 people that you can predict exactly 2 people will get it. Diseases do not work perfectly smooth and homogeneous across a population, but for the sake of argument here, we're going to do that. So now it has a yearly incidence of 2 in 50, but there are 4 people now who have it. So the prevalence is 4 in 50, or it would be 8 out of 100. So the incidence is still 4%, but the disease has a prevalence now of 8%. Why is it 8%? Well, the first 2 people who had it haven't finished with the disease. The only way they get out of the game is if they are cured or they die. So the next year, another 2 people get the disease. And then let's say, for the sake of argument and because we want to be happy, one of the 2 people who had the disease goes into remission. They're cured. No cancer. So 2 more people got the disease, still has an incidence of 4%, but now 5 out of 50 people in the population have it, so it's got a prevalence of 10%. Well, another 2 years pass, 2 more people get it, but this time, well, one of the people, unfortunately, who had the cancer had an aggressive form. They die, and so they're removed, but another person is cured. So incidence, yearly incidence of 2%, but now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with the disease out of 49 because we lost 1 person. So you can see how this goes. So incidence refers to number of new cases per year. Prevalence refers to number of cases in our population with the disease. The only way you get out of the game is if you get cured, and that's the way we want you to get out of the game, or if unfortunately you die, and then you were removed from the population. So incidence, new cases. Prevalence, how many people have it. 2 ways out. One good way, one way we prefer not to talk about. Okay? So this is what's going to be in play with the final 2 assignments that I have you do, especially with the reproductive cancers assignment that I have coming up. All right? Hopefully that helps a little bit. See you around.